Hello and welcome to Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. I'm Swebb,
And I'm Dad.
and we are the dad and daughter duo talking about all of our favorite sports moments from the week, and there have been many. Dad, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Uh, it's been a day. It has been a day.
What happened?
Well, for starters, we recorded the episode and half of it didn't record. So we're back here for round two. But before that, Uh, I exited the elevator today
Mm-hmm.
to a little tiny crawling creature with a long tail running away and down the hallway. So I don't know where it ended up going. It's not currently in my apartment, but I do not like having unwelcomed visitors.
Um, was that Mickey Mouse?
It was, but not the good kind. So for starters, I have a duplex for people who have not been to my house, which is most of you. Last night I woke up in the middle of the night and I thought I heard a little and I have a patio, but I keep the door to the patio open, but I have a screen that I keep over the door. So it's like a magnetic screen so that you can easily walk out of it, but nothing can get into
Mm.
it. So I just assumed that it was outside. That's what I was trying to tell myself. But needless to say, I ended up not being able to sleep most of the night. And I slept, when I did finally fall asleep, I slept with the lights on because I figured that if the lights were on, this little guy, wherever he was, wasn't going to come out. So I'm running on maybe 3 hours of sleep. Um, Couple that with the fact that I now saw this guy in the hallway. And then once I get into my apartment, I go upstairs. I see that there's another tiny one crawling on the
Oh
screen,
man.
which I didn't even think that they could crawl um, like that and that high. So now I'm really freaked out because I'm like, okay, if you were that high, there it was like on the top of the screen. If you're that high, then you could crawl anywhere. Um, but I'm thinking there's construction happening in the building next door, and I'm thinking that all of the neighbors that no one knew were over there are now finding a new home for the foreseeable future. So I am not happy.
When are you moving out of New York City?
The sooner the better. It's I ordered some spray, like all
Right.
types of things, but this is ridiculous. I'm paying too much in rent to have unwelcomed guests.
I don't know, Swebb. I don't know.
So
You gotta
that's
start locking everything.
Well, I like to have some fresh air come through the apartment without, in the summer, having to use my AC. In the winter, it's just nice to have a little bit of a cool breeze because everyone's on the same heat system. So the thing like burns up the whole apartment because you can't actually control the temperature. It's actually probably a temperature that you would love because you love keeping things nice and toasty as if we're sitting over a campfire.
I like it warm, Swebb. I like it warm.
So I've become accustomed to leaving a window or two open. Here, my windows are downstairs. My bed is upstairs, so I have a little patio door that I sometimes like to keep open, and I have a screen above it or in the doorway. So I'm gonna have to figure something out, but I am going through it today. Okay.
Well, I don't know what to tell you, Swebb.
I don't know. I
Call
don't know if I'm gonna go to sleep.
call U-Haul. Call U-Haul.
Ugh. I and the thing is, when I complain about this, because we also have been having issues with the intercom and it being able to let people in. So when I complain about this, they're probably not going to respond because these people don't care. Their bedside manner is terrible.
When you talking about the
I mean, the
superintendent?
building, yeah, the ownership company. I mean, we had washing machines down for a while. The elevator was down. I live on the seventh floor. The elevator was down, and it was at a time when I had a suitcase with me.
Oh.
So I just
When are you moving, Swebb?
I am just having a day. But enough about that because today marks the 21st anniversary of Aaron Boone, the current Yankees manager, hitting a game winning home run into the upper left field deck in the ALCS 2003 ALCS Yankees versus Boston Red Sox.
Yep.
Did you know that, Dad?
I didn't know that today was the anniversary, but I do remember that game like it was yesterday. He hit one of
I
the
am
the biggest home runs in Yankee history, and then you see dopey Yankee fans going to games and booing the guy now because a relief pitcher he put in didn't get the job done. It's unbelievable.
So, to give everyone a little bit of context, the Yankees and the Red Sox have a storied rivalry. It's kind of cooled down in recent years because both teams haven't always been as good. But this was back at a time, 2003, when the Yankees and the Red Sox were perennially 1 and 2 in the AL East. And you had guys on the Red Sox like Kurt Schilling and Jason Varitek and David Ortiz and Manny Ramirez
Pedro
and
Mart-
Nomar Garcia
Pedro
Parra.
Martinez.
Pedro Martinez, who used to give me nightmares whenever I saw that he was going to be pitching against the Yankees. And I'm sure he gave every Yankee batter nightmares. But on the Yankees side, you had the core group of guys. These were Derek Jeter, Jorge Posada, Andy Pettit, Bernie Williams. These were all the guys. Tino Martinez. These were the guys that had won a bunch of World Series championships. And this was kind of a season where you weren't sure if you were going to sign guys back. There were some guys were probably going to leave to take a bigger contract other places. Guys were getting a little bit older. So this felt like the end of that core run from 96, really 95 to 2003. And the Yankees or then the Red Sox hadn't won a World Series in decades.
Yeah. 1918 or something.
Yeah. So this was a time when they were like starving for a win. And as Yankee fans, you just wanted to see them suffer.
And they in that game, Pedro Martinez started that game, and they had the Yankees. They were up big early, and little by little, Yankees they brought in Messina to out of the bullpen. He was a starting pitcher, and he pitched like 4 or 5 innings of shutout ball. Then they brought in David Wells. He gave up a home run. But then the Yankees came back in the seventh inning. They started chipping away. And I think it was in the bottom of the eighth where they had a big rally. Posada hit a bloop double. They scored 2 runs, tied it up. And then in extra innings, after Boston brought in Tim Wakefield, who was a knuckleball pitcher, and his knuckleball always stayed high. Usually, knuckleball pitches, the ball floats down. And Boone led off that inning, I believe, and he's a high ball hitter, and it was over. Home run, and it was over. The place went crazy. That was probably one of the loudest times I heard Yankee Stadium.
And we were at home. And so this was back at a time, to give everyone some context, this was back at a time where we only had two TVs in the house. We had one in the living room and we had one in your bedroom. And so I usually like to make myself comfortable in your bed, yours and mom's bed, watching TV. And this was a game, I was in high school. So this was a game that started around 8 o'clock. I'm watching the game. My mom's doing my hair. I'm sitting under the dryer watching the game. Then I think we had moved the dryer into the bedroom so I could watch. Then my hair was done. I go and lay back down in your bed, and it's getting to the point where it's like I'm tired. I have to wake up at 6 something in the morning to go to school. School started at 7:20 a.m. It's still dark when you're waking up, and I'm a high school kid. And I'm watching the game probably with one eye open at this point. Like the second eye is getting ready to close. And all of a sudden Aaron Boone hits that home run. And I hop out of bed. At this point, you were upstairs because normally you were downstairs watching sports on the downstairs TV. Mom was upstairs watching CSI and Law and Order and the nightly news. So it was take your pick. And a lot of the times I was upstairs, a lot of the times I was downstairs watching games. It just depended. But this one, I was extra tired. So I'm laying in bed watching with one eye open. Aaron Boone hits the home run. I jump out of bed. You're jumping. Mom's now awake, and this is well past her bedtime. That was just a memory for the ages.
Yep.
And it was always nice to stick it to the Red Sox that way.
Yeah, I know. I know. Unfortunately, next year we were up 3-0 in the playoffs, and they came back and stuck it to us. But
I
what
try
can you
to
do? What can you do?
I try to forget that one.
Even before I was born, before you were born, the Yankees were sticking it to the Red Sox for decades, and finally, the Red Sox got them in 2004. But that
Yeah.
2003 was good because we rose from the dead and beat them late.
It looked close. It looked like they were gonna stick it to us in that
Yep.
one, and then all of a sudden we came back, and it was nice. It didn't matter that we lost to the Marlins in the World Series, although that was pretty disappointing because that was a team that we felt was winnable, beatable. But man, at least when the season was over, it was like at least we beat the Red Sox.
And another thing I remember from that game, there was a fan sitting over the Yankee dugout, like the first or second row, and he had a jacket on all night. And back in those days, you couldn't walk into Yankee Stadium as a Red Sox fan, especially in the playoffs, with your Red Sox gear on and get out of there. Just like a Yankee fan couldn't go up to Boston and wear Yankee jackets on. So this fan had a thing, and in the bottom of the seventh inning, it looked like the Red Sox had the game. Finally, and they got the Yankees out, and they were still up by a few runs. Finally, he rips off his jacket, and he has a Red Sox jersey on underneath, and he starts screaming. That guy was miserable a few innings later because
Love
he
it.
thought they had it in the bag, and he started celebrating. He ripped off his coat, and he had this Red Sox uniform on.
You don't want to celebrate too early, folks.
How's that saying go? Don't count your chickens.
Don't count your eggs before they hatch.
No, don't count your chickens before they
I
hatch.
know. I know. So let's talk about today's present day ALCS. Now the Yankees are looking good. They're up 2-0 in the ALCS against the Cleveland Guardians. And they have Wednesday night off as we're recording. Thursday, they will play in Cleveland for game 3. Clark Schmidt will be on the mound. So far, Dad, there have been some bright spots for the Yankees, but they haven't played their best brand of baseball.
No, they haven't hit with men in scoring position. They've drawn a lot of walks. So in the Kansas City series as well as this series, they've had a lot of base runners. Another one thing that they have done is they've won out the starting pitching and they've won out some of these relief pitches and kept the pressure on constantly. On what was it Tuesday night, game 2 against the Indians, they finally started getting some hits with men in scoring position, made a big difference.
So the Yankees' story for the playoffs has been men left on base. For the playoffs, they've left 52 men on base. They are 8 for 52 with runners in scoring position. That's a 154 batting average. So they're not necessarily, although guys are getting on base, they're not getting the big hits at the right times of the game. It seems a little bit with Cleveland, similarly as it did with Kansas City, that Cleveland is bailing the Yankees out a bit. The dropped pop up in what was it, the first inning of Tuesday night's game.
The wild
They're
pitches,
finding a way.
in game 1. I think they had 4 or 5 wild pitches, which is very unusual. The Yankees scored a run or two. I think they scored 2 runs on wild pitches. But they're getting a lot of men on base, and just remember, Cleveland has a young team and a lot of young pitchers, and there's a lot of pressure on these guys. And you come into Yankee Stadium this time of the year, it's cold, it's windy, fans are on top of you, fans are screaming, almost 50,000 fans screaming. It's a lot of pressure on these young players.
And speaking of pressure, it doesn't seem like the Yankees bullpen has really felt any of it because the Yankees pitching as an entire staff, both starters and relievers, the ERA is 2.50, 2.50. Luke Weaver,
Mm.
4 saves in 7 innings, a 1.29 ERA, and 9 strikeouts. Clay Holmes, the former Yankees closer that got moved into this setup man role and Luke Weaver moved into the closer role in September, he has been lights out, 0 ERA. So hasn't given up any runs, 2 wins, 5 strikeouts in 6 and 2/3 innings. And Tommy Canley, 4 strikeouts, also 0 runs in 4 1/3 innings pitched. So, and I haven't even named the whole entire bullpen, but from start to finish, or really, if the bullpen itself has been lights out and hasn't felt that pressure.
Yep, bullpens pitch well. It's been a team effort. And it's not just one or two relievers. It's like four relievers that have pitched well, five relievers that have pitched well. And they're doing what they have to do. Now they have to keep the hammer down, keep the pressure on as they go to Cleveland. And the good news is they haven't played that well at home this year, but they've played very well on the road. They've been the best team in baseball on the road this year. So maybe they can go out to Cleveland, win two more games, series over, then they can take a break until the World Series. But they got to
So it's a
keep the
best
pressure down. They can't get happy.
Right. It's a best of 7 series. The starters haven't necessarily performed the way you would want them to in the playoffs. Garrett Cole didn't have a great outing in game 2 on Tuesday, despite the great outing that he had in game 4 against the Royals in the ALDS. From a lineup, and we talked about men being left on base and guys not really hitting with runners in scoring position, but there have been some bright spots in the lineup.
Hmm.
Juan Soto hitting 350 with 3 RBIs and a home run. Giancarlo Stanton, he's been really the MVP thus far in the playoffs, hitting 304 with 2 home runs, 5 RBIs, and 3 runs. And Anthony Rizzo, back in the lineup for the ALCS after breaking his 2 fingers the second to last day or game of the regular season. Oftentimes, we don't really like to give Aaron Boone a lot of credit. We like to complain about maybe over managing and doing too much or not doing enough. Is it's too hot, it's too cold. But he inserts Anthony Rizzo into the lineup with 2 fingers that aren't completely healed, and he is 3 for 7, hitting 429.
And playing good defense. It's unbelievable. This time of the year, you need guys with some experience. He's one of only two guys on the Yankees that has already won a World Series in Chicago with the Cubs. Okay. He knows what it takes. Juan Soto won a World Series in Washington with with the Washington team.
With the Nationals.
Nationals. He knows these guys know what it takes to win this time of the year. Okay. And they're both coming up big. Volpe's played well. Looks like Judge might be starting to heat up. And when he gets hot, he can stay hot for like 6 weeks. So,
Yeah, Judge hasn't been hot thus far. He's hit 167, but he did have that home run in game 2. You mentioned Volpe. Both Volpe and Torres, Glaber Torres, have 6 walks in the playoffs each thus far. Volpe, some of the things that I'm really like seeing from him, and he's starting to heat up. His average is going up in the playoffs. He runs the bases incredibly well. A guy who can go from first to third or who can score from second base on a single. He's doing all the things that a lot of those guys in 2003 were doing to win those games.
yep. And that's what it takes. It takes all those little things. And a lot of times in the playoffs, the big players, the big time players aren't always the guy that comes through. Sometimes it's guys that aren't as noticed. The scouting reports aren't as good as some of these other guys, and they come up big. I remember one year, I think Bucky Dent got who was the Yankee shortstop in the '70s, got a World Series MVP.
And the Yankees have room for improvement. We talked about not always hitting in the big spots. The base running, as John Sterling calls it, they've been running the bases like a bunch of drunk guys. Lots of boneheaded mistakes from some of the guys outside of Anthony Volpe. I'm not going to talk poorly about Giancarlo Stanton in the way that he runs as Bob Costas did in the ALDS, but he can't run really. So the Yankees, despite the fact that there has been some, you know, less than stellar parts of the games, both in pitching and in the lineup and on the bases, they're still up 2-0 and hoping to close this thing out in Cleveland.
Yep. Just got to take it one game at a time, though. One game at a time. And don't count your chickens before they hatch.
You certainly don't want to count those chickens, but it is starting to look nice. And this is the year. This feels like the year, but I'm not going to count those chickens.
One game at a time.
Okay. Should we talk the Mets?
Yes.
We're recording on Wednesday night, so their game is going to start in about an hour or so against LA. It'll be a home game, so this will be game 3 of the AL or the NLCS. And that series is tied 1-1. And this has really been the Mark Vientos show when it comes to the Mets lineup. He's batting 378, 11 RBIs, 3 home runs in the playoffs.
That guy has been tremendous. Their team, pretty much, things turned around for them when they brought him up and put him into the lineup every day. Um, and not just him. Early in the season, I believe Alvarez, the catcher, was hurt. I think he got hurt in spring training and he missed like the first month. When he came in and started playing, it got back into shape and started playing every day, and they started melding in more of these young players. Another guy that's been good at unsung heroes, like the outfielder Taylor, has gotten some big hits for them. Marte has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. And when Lindor heated up, probably late May, early June, that's when everything started turning around for the Mets. And they've extremely resilient, and they could win the whole thing. They could win the whole thing.
And Mark Vientos certainly the hottest hitter in the Mets lineup, but Francisco Lindor has 2 home runs in the playoffs, and Pete Alonso has 3 home runs in the playoffs, and those have all been timely home runs that have,
Hmm.
shifted the result of the game in the late innings. So Wednesday night, we'll see what happens in Game 3 for the Mets versus the Dodgers. It'll be Walker Buehler versus Luis Severino. Things are looking good on the baseball front, on the diamond. On the
Yes, they
football
are.
pitch, football Americano, um, the Jets
Oh
and the
boy.
Giants. Let's talk about the Jets because we're Jets fans, and some of us more proudly than others. Um, the Jets are not good. They lost on Sunday against the Bills, 23-20,
Monday.
or
Monday.
Monday Night Football, 23-20. They're now 2-4 on the season, but they made some moves this week. Tuesday, they traded for Devontae Adams, former receiver of the Green Bay Packers when Aaron Rodgers was quarterback. So played together with Aaron Rodgers for 8 seasons. Most recently, has spent 2.5 seasons in Las Vegas with the Raiders. He has also not played the past couple games because he has a hamstring issue. But from everything that I've heard today, Wednesday, which is a walkthrough day,
He's better.
he's back. He's playing on Sunday. He's about 95%. He's also happens to be rooming with Aaron Rodgers for the interim until he can find a place. What's going on with the Jets, Dad?
First of all, Jets are 2-4. Two of the games that they've lost because of horrible field goal kicking by a field goal kicker who was tremendous last year. He was like automatic. This year, he's missed two. If he had made field goals, he's missed 3 big field goals, makeable field goals. If he had made those 3 field goals, the Jets would be 4-2 instead of 2-4. Okay,
I have a confession to make.
go
Monday
ahead.
night, now the Yankee game 1 of the ALCS was on. The Rangers game was on. There was a lot of action on Monday night. I was watching the Jets. They were down for a bit. I decide the playoff baseball is more important. Game finishes. I go back to the Jets. It's now tied 20-20. Uh, the kicker misses the field goal. And at this point, I'm like so tired. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to bed. I don't even want to know. I don't want to stay up any longer. I'm just taking my butt to bed. And that proved to be the right decision.
Well, I had the Yankees that were on TBS, so I had them on the TV. Then I opened up a window on my computer and had the Jet game on there. Then the Ranger game was also, and I opened up another window, I had the Ranger game going. Then I opened up another window, I had News Channel going. So I had all kinds of action going on, Swebb, all at one time. And I just kept flipping to one thing to another. And that was the deal. And the same thing on Tuesday night. I had a North Carolina exhibition game on ESPNU. I had the Yankee game on the TV. And I had something else on. You got to be flexible, Swebb. You got to be flexible. That's what the computer's for. That's what um, uh, uh, tablets are for. That's what your cell phone's for. You can get action on anything. Now, back when I was a kid, you had a handful of channels and you only had a TV. You didn't have all these other options. They didn't even computers weren't even invented.
Well, sadly enough, back when I was a kid, computers were invented, but you couldn't necessarily watch a game on the computer. So
Right.
I know the feeling as well. So let's talk Devonte Adams here. He throughout his career or last season for the Raiders, he had 8 touchdowns, 1,144 receiving yards. Through his 8 seasons with Aaron Rodgers, 7,500 receiving yards, 615 receptions, 68 touchdowns. So we're hoping that they can find a little bit of magic. Now he is coming off of a hamstring injury. We don't know. His best seasons are likely behind him, but he can be a legitimate piece for the Jets. Does this move make a difference for the Jets?
Yeah, it'll give them a little more offense. I just don't. First of all, he's a all pro wide receiver. He's on his way to the Hall of Fame. Aaron Rodgers is on his way to the Hall of Fame. Aaron Rodgers Monday night played a very good game. And this will give him another receiver that he's familiar with to help him. But Jets have a few problems. Their defensive line isn't as good as it was the last few years. So they're not getting the kind of pass rush they were getting. They're not stopping the run the way they were the last few years. And they have a field goal kicking problem. Hopefully, they can put some additional points up on the board so the games won't come down to a field goal. If everything melds together, they can still make the playoffs because they're in a division that's not that good. But I like a team with a plan. And this looks like so much helter skelter, push it in the panic button at the last minute. And that's what it is. They're picking up some excellent players with a great past. Maybe it might work. And because they're in a weak division, because New England's not good, Miami's not good, Buffalo's the only team that's pretty good. And they could have beat Buffalo the other
Right.
night if it wasn't for the field goal
And
kicking.
they're not as good as they have been the past
No,
couple
they're
of
not
years.
as good as they have been, but they're
So,
still a good team.
all right. Let's talk about things that we're looking forward to. Now, this past weekend, Michigan and Miami were both on byes. So this upcoming weekend, Michigan will play at Illinois on Saturday afternoon, and Miami will play at Louisville, arguably their toughest game of the season. We also have the NBA coming up. NBA regular season will start next week.
Well, you notice I have a nice Michigan football jersey shirt on, Swebb. Very nice lady gave me this. How do you like that, Swebb?
It looks
I
good
got
and it fits properly.
I got the Michigan helmet back out there. They're 4-2. They got some work to do. Um, but out in my tip of the week, I'll talk about Michigan a little more, Michigan
Okay.
football a little more.
Well, let's before we get to your tip. So next week, I think it makes sense for us to talk a lot about the NBA season. We'll do last year. We're closing in on a year of us doing Dad and Sweb Talk Sports because last year our first episode ever was us previewing the 2023-2024 NBA season. So next week we're gonna do a deep dive into the Knicks. There's been a lot of activity during the preseason, some jawing of Dante
Ooh,
DiVincenzo and
ooh.
our assistant coaches. The preseason, most recent preseason game for the Knicks, though the starting five didn't even play. So I think we'll get more into that next week, and we'll break down the whole Knicks season and their roster and everything that we are looking forward to there. So, Dad, do you want to leave us with your tip of the week before we close things out?
Yeah. Swebb, Michigan's 4-2 this year. A lot of teams will be happy with that. But we got spoiled. They won the national championship last year. They went undefeated. The year before, they got into the playoffs. And this year, they're struggling, quarterback issues, and crying. I've been complaining about lack of quarterback and stuff. So I decided to do something, Sweat. I decided to look in the mirror. Ooh. And when I looked in the mirror, I said, you know what? Maybe it's me. I had the yellow Michigan shirt that's kind of worn out. So this
A
shirt
little
came in
tight.
handy. A little, a little tight, old, stained, and old. So this came in handy. I got the Michigan helmet. I said, you know what? Maybe I haven't been a good enough fan. Now, I've watched every game. I've been hoping for wins, but maybe I didn't put enough of myself emotionally into the team this year.
And there's
So,
a lot of yourself to go around.
exactly. So, after looking in the mirror, Sweb, I said, you know what? Let me bring the helmet back out. Let me change shirts and start rooting like crazy this week coming up. That's my tip of the week.
So you're going to be rooting like crazy this week.
Yes, I am.
And what happens when your quarterback throws for less than 100 passing yards?
I'm going to hope the running backs run for 300 yards.
So you're going to be rooting like crazy regardless of the amount of passing yards by your starting quarterback.
Whoa, whoa. Now, we had a quarterback, Tuttle, that was injured in preseason. He didn't play he wasn't even available to play the first few weeks. The last game, 2 weeks ago, he came in, played, gave him a little bit of a spark. He can actually throw the ball a little bit. He's a transfer from the University of Indiana. He was a starting quarterback at Indiana like 2 years ago. He was on the bench last year at Michigan. Now he has a chance to play. He's going to be the starting quarterback. Hopefully, this will make a difference. I'm not saying he's going to the NFL. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star, an all-American, but anything is an improvement over the quarterback play we saw the first 5 games.
You know it's bad when you're doing the hard sales pitch of the starting quarterback, former starting quarterback of the Indiana Hoosiers. So, and I'm not even sure what their record was, but they're no Ohio State, they're no Penn State. They're not in the elite top echelon of Big 10 football. So,
Well, you know I'm a good salesman, Sweb. I can sell ice to an Eskimo.
we'll see if anyone actually really bought that on Mr. Tuttle. We'll see. We'll recap next week. So that's a good tip. You're gonna root like crazy, and
Yep.
hey, I'm gonna root for you. I'm gonna root for you
Oh, thank you, Sweb.
for your happiness. You look good in the shirt. The helmet looks great on the couch. There's nowhere to go but up.
That is true.
And we're going to keep rooting for the rest of our teams. Yankees, for those Mets fans out there, we'll show our love until there's a potential matchup here. And, the Jets and the Giants, you just got to pray about it. So, and shout out to the Rangers and the Islanders. The NHL season has started, and the Rangers are 2-0-1. The Islanders were 1-1-1. So, heavy into sports. It's a great time of year. I'm going
Yep.
to go figure out what's happening with potential visitors. I don't really want to know anything. I don't really want to know, but I feel like I should probably just poke
You should.
around and see what's happening.
You might want to put a few traps down, Sweb.
Yeah, I don't have any, but I might go out and get some. And that concludes this week's episode of Dad and Swebb Talk Sports. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X, and subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. And we will see you next week.
So long.
Thank you for tuning into Dad and Swebb Talk Sports, the show where we cover all of our favorite sports moments from the past week. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Rumble, and follow us at Dad and Swebb on Instagram and X. See you next week.